I stood frozen in the elegant lobby of Blackwell and Hayes. The receptionist's words echoed in my head, "Mr. Thompson's wife Melissa is already upstairs." But I was Mrs. Thompson. Had been for 8 years. My grip tightened on the lunch bag I'd brought for Derek until my knuckles turned white. In that moment, I had to decide, walk away or uncover the truth about the man I thought I knew. The man who kissed me goodbye this morning. The father of our 6-year-old daughter. If you've ever had that moment where your entire reality shifts beneath your feet, you know exactly what I felt standing there. Before I share how this nightmare unfolded, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. This journey taught me so much about resilience and what family truly means. If my story resonates with you, please subscribe to join our community of survivors and thrivers. Now, let me take you back to how Derek and I began, before everything fell apart. Derek and I met 12 years ago at Northwestern University. I was finishing my education degree, dreaming of teaching elementary school, while he was powering through law school with ambitious plans. He wasn't like the other law students with their designer clothes and family connections. Derek came from a modest background in Wisconsin, worked part-time at the campus legal aid clinic, and had this genuine warmth that drew people to him. Our first meeting was at a campus coffee shop. I accidentally knocked over his meticulously organized case notes with my backpack. Instead of being annoyed, he laughed and said it was probably a sign from the universe that he needed a break. We talked for 3 hours that day, missing our next classes. By the end of the week, we were inseparable. After graduation, I secured a teaching position at a Minneapolis elementary school while Derek struggled to find his footing at smaller law firms. Those early years weren't easy. Derek took cases that barely paid the bills while I supported us on my teacher's salary. But we were happy, building our life together, dreaming of the future. For years into our relationship, Derek proposed on Christmas morning. Nothing fancy, just us in our pajamas in our tiny apartment with holiday music playing. 6 months later, we had a small wedding in my parents' backyard. Derek's mother Evelyn cried through the entire ceremony, repeatedly telling me how happy she was that her son had found someone who believed in him. 2 years into our marriage, Grace arrived, tiny, perfect, and completely stealing our hearts. Derek was an attentive father from the start, getting up for midnight feedings and reading to her even as a newborn. Those were our happiest years, despite the financial struggles. Our little family of 3 against the world. Then came Derek's big break 8 months ago. A partner at Blackwell and Hayes, one of Chicago's most prestigious law firms, had been impressed by Derek's handling of a complex case and offered him a junior partner position. The salary was triple what he'd been making, but it meant relocating from Minneapolis to Chicago. It was a difficult decision. I loved my teaching job and had built strong relationships with my colleagues and students. Grace was settled in her kindergarten class. But this was Derek's dream, the opportunity he'd worked toward for a decade. So I resigned from my position, we sold our modest home, and moved to an upscale Chicago suburb. The transition wasn't easy. While Derek threw himself into his new role, I became Grace's primary caregiver in a city where we knew no one. The promised help with finding me a new teaching position never materialized as Derek became increasingly absorbed in work. Dinners alone became the norm. Weekend client meetings multiplied. When he was home, Derek was distracted, constantly checking his phone or bringing work with him. Looking back, the red flags were waving violently in front of me. Derek changed all his passwords for security reasons. He'd shower immediately after coming home, regardless of the time. Our once active intimate life dwindled to occasional, perfunctory encounters. But I dismissed these changes, attributing them to work stress and adjustment to our new life. Even when his mother Evelyn visited and made strange comments about complications and difficult choices over dinner, I didn't connect the dots. When she pulled me aside and asked if Derek was doing well with an odd emphasis, I assumed she was concerned about his work pressure. My best friend Natalie was the one who finally broke through my denial. During a video chat, after listening to me rationalize Derek's 3rd consecutive missed family dinner, she asked point blank, "Amanda, when was the last time you actually saw Derek at his office?" I realized I never had. Natalie suggested I surprise him with lunch. It'll be romantic, she said. And you'll get to see his workplace. The idea took root. I wanted to reconnect with my increasingly distant husband, to remind him, and maybe myself, that we were still a team. I planned it carefully for the following Tuesday, arranging for my parents to pick Grace up from school. I made Derek's favorite sandwich, dressed in a new blue dress he'd once complimented, and headed downtown to the sleek skyscraper where Blackwell and Hayes occupied the top floors. I never imagined that walking through those revolving doors would shatter the life we'd built together. The Blackwell and Hayes reception area on the 22nd floor exuded power and prestige, all gleaming marble, glass, and expensive artwork. My heels sank into plush carpeting as I approached the receptionist, a poised woman with an elegant gray bob and perfect posture. "I'm here to see Derek Thompson," I said, trying to sound confident despite feeling out of place. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked, fingers hovering over her keyboard. "No, I'm his wife. I thought I'd surprise him with lunch." I held up the insulated lunch bag with an awkward smile. The receptionist's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh, I believe Mrs. Thompson just went up to see him a few minutes ago." My smile froze. There must be some mistake. "I'm Amanda Thompson, Derek's wife." She frowned, checked her computer. "Perhaps you're related differently? Our records show Melissa Thompson as Mr. Thompson's spouse and emergency contact." Blood rushed to my ears. I fumbled for my driver's license and held it out with trembling fingers. "This is me. Amanda Thompson. Married to Derek for 8 years. The receptionist's professional demeanor cracked slightly, revealing uncomfortable recognition of the situation. She glanced toward a bank of glass-walled conference rooms, then back at me. "Mr. Thompson is in a meeting in conference room C with some senior partners and Mrs. Thompson." I followed her gaze across the open floor plan. Through the glass walls, I could see Derek sitting at a long table with several older men in expensive suits. Beside him sat a striking woman with dark hair, her hand resting comfortably on Derek's arm as she laughed at something one of the partners said. "I need to see him. Now." My voice sounded strange, detached. "Ma'am, I don't think." I was already walking toward the conference room, the receptionist hurrying behind me. "Miss, please wait. They're in an important client meeting." I pushed open the heavy glass door. 7 heads turned simultaneously. Derek's face drained of color when he saw me standing there, lunch bag still clutched in my hand like some ridiculous prop. "Amanda?" His voice cracked. "What are you doing here?" The dark-haired woman looked confused. "Derek, who's this?" An older man with silver hair and an imposing presence, clearly a senior partner, frowned. "Thompson, what's going on?" My eyes locked with Derek's. "Yes, Derek, why don't you explain what's going on?" "Explain who I am." Derek stood abruptly. "This isn't the time or place. Amanda, please, let's talk outside." The dark-haired woman stood too. "Derek? Who is she?" I turned to her, this elegant stranger wearing a wedding ring that matched Derek's. "I'm Amanda Thompson. Derek's wife. His real wife. Mother of his 6-year-old daughter." I held up my driver's license again, this time toward her. "And you are?" She paled, looking between Derek and me. "I'm Melissa Thompson. Derek and I have been married for 3 years." The room went completely silent. The senior partner, Richard, according to his nameplate, removed his glasses slowly. "Thompson, my office. Now." Derek grabbed my arm. "Amanda, please. I can explain everything." I yanked away from him. "Explain what? That our entire marriage is a lie? That you have another wife? Another life?" "Security is on their way," the receptionist murmured from the doorway. Melissa's composure broke. "Is this true? You're already married? With a child?" Her voice rose with each question. Derek looked trapped, his eyes darting between us, the partners, the gathering audience of employees outside the glass walls. This is a misunderstanding. Please, both of you, let's discuss this privately. I reached for my wedding ring, the simple gold band we'd chosen together when we could barely afford the deposit on our first apartment. I yanked it off and threw it at him. It bounced off his chest and skittered across the polished conference table. 8 years, Derek. 8 years of my life. What kind of monster are you? Security arrived, 2 uncomfortable-looking men in suits who clearly weren't prepared for this situation. I'll go, I said, suddenly aware of the spectacle I'd created. The humiliation burned almost as much as the betrayal. But this isn't over. As the security guards escorted me toward the elevators, I heard heels clicking rapidly behind me. Melissa had followed, her face a mask of shock and anger that probably mirrored my own. Wait, she called. Please wait. We stood facing each other as the elevator doors opened. I had no idea, she said, her voice breaking. I swear I didn't know. I believed her. The devastation in her eyes was too raw to be anything but genuine. There's a coffee shop across the street, I said after a moment. I think we have a lot to talk about. She nodded, and together we stepped into the elevator, united in our shock and betrayal by the man we had both called husband. The coffee shop was a typical downtown establishment, overpriced drinks, uncomfortable artistic seating, and acoustic covers of pop songs playing just loud enough to be annoying. Melissa and I sat across from each other at a small table in the corner, 2 untouched lattes between us. 3 years, Melissa said, breaking the silence. She twisted her wedding ring, a large diamond in an elaborate setting, nothing like my simple band. We met at a charity gala in Boston. He said he was a widower. I let out a hollow laugh. Widower? That's a new one. He told me his wife died of cancer, Melissa continued. She pulled out her phone, scrolled through photos, and showed me one of her and Derek on their wedding day. Different venue, different ring, different life. We got married at the Four Seasons. His mother wasn't there, he said it was too painful for her after losing his father. His mother Evelyn is very much alive in Wisconsin. And his father left when Derek was 12. He has a sister too, Rebecca. Melissa's perfectly manicured hand flew to her mouth. He told me he was an only child. That both parents died in a car accident when he was in law school. We spent the next hour piecing together Derek's elaborate web of lies. According to Melissa, Derek had been working at a Boston firm when they met. He claimed to have graduated from Harvard Law, he went to Northwestern. He mentioned a brief first marriage in his 20s that ended with his wife's cancer diagnosis, completely fabricated. He never mentioned Grace. I showed Melissa photos of our family, Grace's kindergarten graduation, Christmas at my parents' house, our modest wedding. With each image, her expression grew more pained. He has a daughter, she whispered, staring at Grace's gap-toothed smile. A beautiful little girl, and he never told me she existed. Did you? I hesitated. Do you have children? Melissa shook her head. We were trying. I had a miscarriage last year. Her voice broke slightly. Derek was so supportive. He seemed so excited about becoming a father. The cruelty of this hit me hard. While comforting Melissa through her loss, Derek was neglecting his actual child back in Chicago. What about finances? I asked. We have joint accounts. A mortgage. We have joint accounts too. And we just bought a condo in Beacon Hill. Melissa reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. I'm a financial advisor. The irony isn't lost on me. He told me you were unstable, Melissa said after a pause. When we started dating, he said his ex-wife couldn't accept the divorce and kept making scenes. That's why we had to be careful about social media. Why he was sometimes unreachable. She looked at me with new understanding. He was with you. And when he was unreachable for me, he was with you, I said quietly. The pieces were falling into place, the business trips, the weekend conferences, the late nights. Derek hadn't been building his legal career, he'd been maintaining two separate lives. There might be others, Melissa said, voicing what I'd been thinking. If he could do this to both of us. We need to find out. I straightened my shoulders. I won't let him keep manipulating us. Melissa nodded firmly. I have access to our accounts. And his work computer. I have his personal documents at home. And I can talk to his family. We exchanged phone numbers and email addresses, an unlikely alliance formed in the ruins of our marriages. What will you do now? I asked as we prepared to leave. Melissa's eyes hardened. First, I'm going to empty our joint savings account before he can. Then I'm going to find out exactly who I married. She paused. What about you? I thought about Grace, who would be getting out of school soon, expecting her normal life to continue. I need to protect my daughter. And then I need answers. As we parted outside the coffee shop, Melissa hesitated, then gave me a quick, awkward hug. I'm so sorry about all this, she said. I'm sorry too, I replied. And I meant it. In Derek's elaborate deception, Melissa was as much a victim as I was. Neither of us saw Derek watching from across the street, his face dark with fury at our unexpected alliance. I drove home on autopilot, my mind racing. By the time I pulled into our suburban driveway, I'd formed a plan. Grace wouldn't be home for 3 more hours, plenty of time to search for evidence. Our house, once a source of pride, now felt like a stage set for Derek's performance as devoted husband and father. I went straight to his home office and began methodically searching through drawers, shelves, and cabinets. Behind the false back of his desk drawer, I found a key I didn't recognize. It took 20 minutes of searching before I discovered what it opened, a small safe hidden in the back of our bedroom closet, concealed behind shoe boxes. Inside the safe, Derek's dual life lay exposed. Multiple passports with different names but Derek's photo. A driver's license for Derek Williams. Credit cards under various identities. A prepaid phone I'd never seen before. And photographs, Derek with another woman, neither Melissa nor me, standing on a Seattle beach. My hands trembling, I called Derek's mother, Evelyn. Amanda, dear. How lovely to hear from you. Her warmth made my throat tighten. Evelyn, I need to ask you something important. I took a deep breath. Does Derek have a history of relationships I don't know about? Before me? The long silence confirmed my fears before she spoke. Oh, Amanda. What has he done now? Over the next hour, Evelyn revealed what the family had hidden for years. Derek's pattern of deception had started in college with multiple concurrent girlfriends. There was a broken engagement in Seattle that ended with the woman in therapy. Financial schemes targeting friends and acquaintances. A stint in therapy that Derek abandoned when the therapist suggested a personality disorder diagnosis. We thought he'd changed with you, Evelyn said, her voice heavy with guilt. He seemed so genuine, so committed. Rebecca and I truly believed you had helped him become a better man. Did you know about Melissa? I asked. Another painful silence. Not specifically. But there were signs during our last visit. Things he said that didn't align with what we knew about your life together. Rebecca tried to confront him, but Derek shut her down. I ended the call with a promise to keep Evelyn updated and a mutual agreement that Grace should maintain a relationship with her grandmother regardless of what happened with Derek. While I searched our home, Melissa was conducting her own investigation. She texted throughout the afternoon with her discoveries. Accessed his work computer. Found emails to a woman named Rachel in Seattle. Romantic content from 2 years ago, stopped suddenly. Client billing records show trips to Boston when he told me he was in Chicago. And trips to Chicago when he told me he was at conferences. Found evidence he's been moving client funds through personal accounts. Fraudulent billing. This is serious, Amanda. I called my friend Natalie, barely holding myself together as I explained the situation. Without hesitation, she offered her guest room for Grace and me. "Come tonight," she insisted. "Before he gets home and realizes you know." I packed essentials for Grace and myself, secured the evidence in a bag, and left Derek's ring on his pillow with a note, "I know everything. Don't come after us." As I loaded the car, my phone pinged with a message from Melissa, "Hired a PI. Meeting tomorrow 9 a.m. By the time I picked Grace up from school, our lives had fundamentally changed, though my daughter didn't know it yet. "Mommy, why are we going to MS. Natalie's house?" Grace asked as I drove away from our neighborhood. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror, Derek's eyes looking back at me from her innocent face. "We're having a little adventure, sweetheart. Daddy made a big mistake at work, and we need to give him some space to fix it." That night, as Grace slept in Natalie's guest room surrounded by borrowed stuffed animals, Melissa called with another bombshell. The PI found Rachel Sullivan in Seattle. She has a story almost identical to ours. Derek was married to her for 4 years while dating you. She finally discovered the truth and confronted him. He disappeared from Seattle overnight, around the same time he met me in Boston. 3 of us, I whispered. At least 3 that we know of. The PI is digging deeper. Financial records, property, other identities. Amanda, this is bigger than affairs or bigamy. The fraud angle at his firm, we're talking potential criminal charges. In that moment, watching my daughter sleep while uncovering the extent of Derek's deception, something shifted within me. The shock and grief began to transform into determination. If Derek Thompson thought he could discard us and move on to his next victims, he was about to discover how wrong he was. I know many of you watching have felt that moment when pain turns to purpose. When you realized you weren't going to let someone else's betrayal define your story. If this resonates with you, drop a comment about when you found your strength after betrayal. And if you're in the middle of that journey right now, just know you're not alone. Our community here is built on supporting each other through these unimaginable moments. Now, let me tell you what happened when Derek realized his carefully constructed world was crumbling. Derek's first text came at 11:43 p.m., "Where are you? We need to talk." By morning, my phone was flooded with messages ranging from apologetic, "Please let me explain. It's not what you think," to threatening, "If you try to take Grace from me, you'll regret it." I didn't respond to any of them, focusing instead on helping Grace adjust to our temporary home with Natalie. I explained, in terms a 6-year-old might grasp, that Daddy had told some very serious lies that hurt Mommy and others, and we needed some time apart while grown-ups sorted things out. "Did Daddy lie about loving me too?" Grace asked, her lower lip trembling. The question broke my heart. "No, sweetheart. Daddy loves you very much." The lies were about other things. Adult things. Whether this was true, I honestly didn't know anymore. But I wouldn't burden my daughter with that uncertainty. Meanwhile, Melissa had delivered her own blow to Derek's facade. She'd reported her findings about financial irregularities to the managing partners at Blackwell and Hayes. By noon, Derek had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. I met with Karen Goldstein, a divorce attorney Natalie recommended. Her office was warm and unpretentious, with children's artwork framed alongside her law credentials. "Legally, this is complicated," Karen explained after hearing my story. "Technically, your marriage is valid since it came first. Melissa's would be considered void. But the multiple identities, potential fraud, and financial entanglements make this far from straightforward." "What about Grace?" I asked. "Can he fight for custody?" Karen's expression softened. "He can try. But judges don't look kindly on parents who lead double lives. Our priority will be establishing a stable environment for Grace and documenting Derek's pattern of deception." When I checked our joint accounts later that day, I discovered Derek had emptied them completely. Our credit cards were maxed out with recent cash advances. He'd financially stranded us, just as Melissa had predicted. That evening, my parents arrived from Minnesota, their faces etched with worry and righteous anger on my behalf. my father, a retired accountant, immediately offered financial assistance. My mother took over caring for Grace, giving me space to deal with the practical and legal aspects of our unraveling life. We never liked him, my father admitted as we sat at Natalie's kitchen table. Something always seemed practiced about his charm. But we kept quiet because you seemed happy. I thought I was, I whispered. The next blow came 2 days later when Derek showed up at Natalie's house unannounced, clearly intoxicated. He pounded on the door, shouting my name, demanding to see Grace. When Natalie threatened to call police, he became belligerent, loud enough for neighbors to hear his slurred accusations about me being mentally unstable and kidnapping his daughter. Grace witnessed the entire scene, trembling in my arms as her father, a stranger now, raged outside our sanctuary. After Derek finally left and Grace had cried herself to sleep, I filed for an emergency restraining order. The school principal was surprisingly supportive when I explained our situation, arranging for enhanced security protocols for Grace and connecting us with the school counselor. Grace began having nightmares and wetting the bed, regression our pediatrician assured me was normal under the circumstances. Derek's sister Rebecca reached out next, offering tearful apologies for not warning me years ago. There were incidents in college, she admitted. Women who compared notes and confronted him. But then he'd seem genuinely remorseful, start therapy, convince everyone he was changing. Until the next time. Through it all, Melissa and I maintained daily contact, sharing discoveries and supporting each other through the shock waves. We'd begun to refer to ourselves as the Wives' Club, finding grim humor in our shared predicament. The private investigator Melissa hired delivered his preliminary report after a week. Derek had maintained at least 5 separate identities over the past decade. The Seattle relationship had indeed overlapped with the beginning of my marriage. Financial fraud appeared to extend beyond his current law firm to previous employers. And most disturbing of all, there were indications of a possible 4th relationship developing in Denver. As the criminal investigation into Derek's financial dealings gained momentum, his messages to me became increasingly desperate. He cycled between begging forgiveness, claiming conspiracies against him, offering financial settlements, and threatening lengthy custody battles. I documented everything, following Karen's advice to create a paper trail of his instability and manipulation. Meanwhile, I accepted a teaching assistant position at Grace's school, far below my qualifications but offering free tuition for Grace and a way to rebuild my career. Through it all, Grace remained my priority and my strength. Despite the trauma, children are remarkably resilient. With the help of a gentle therapist specializing in childhood trauma, she began processing her feelings about her father, confusion, anger, grief, and love all tangled together. Sometimes people we love make very bad choices, her therapist explained during a joint session. That doesn't mean you have to stop loving them. But it might mean your relationship changes to keep you safe. 1 month after that fateful day at Blackwell and Hayes, I looked around Natalie's guest room where Grace and I had been living and realized we couldn't continue in limbo. Whether Derek went to prison or not, whether the divorce was simple or complex, we needed to create a new normal. That evening, I began searching for an affordable apartment, the first step toward rebuilding our shattered life. 3 weeks after discovering Derek's double life, I hit rock bottom. The initial shock had worn off, leaving a profound emptiness and self-doubt in its wake. I found myself questioning everything, my judgment, my memories, even my worth. How had I missed the signs for 8 years? Was anything in our marriage real? What kind of person could I be to have been so thoroughly deceived? I sat on the floor of Natalie's bathroom at 2 a.m., silently sobbing to avoid waking Grace or our hosts, when my phone lit up with a text from Melissa, "Can't sleep either? This isn't your fault. Or mine. Remember that." It was the lifeline I needed, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this nightmare. The next morning, I called my parents and accepted the financial help they'd been offering. Then I called the principal at Grace's school and formally accepted the teaching assistant position I'd been considering. Small steps, but they represented taking control of our future rather than remaining trapped in the wreckage of Derek's deception. Our first court appearance for the divorce proceedings came at the 5-week mark. I entered the courthouse with Karen beside me, stomach churning at the prospect of facing Derek in a formal setting. He arrived with an expensively dressed attorney, hair perfectly styled, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He tried to approach me in the hallway, but Karen firmly intercepted him. "My client has a restraining order. Please maintain your distance." In the courtroom, Derek's lawyer presented a carefully crafted image of his client as a dedicated father being kept from his beloved daughter by an emotionally unstable wife. He submitted affidavits claiming I had a history of jealousy and paranoia, fabricated text conversations showing me making threats, even a falsified mental health evaluation. I felt physically ill watching Derek nod solemnly as his attorney spun these lies. When Karen presented evidence of Derek's multiple identities and marriages, his attorney dismissed them as misunderstandings that were being addressed in separate proceedings. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, seemed skeptical of both sides until an unexpected interruption. "Your Honor, may I address the court?" Melissa stood from the gallery, professional and poised in a conservative suit. "And you are?" the judge asked. "Melissa Thompson, the defendant's other wife." Derek's face drained of color as Melissa approached and was sworn in. For the next 20 minutes, she systematically dismantled Derek's claims, presenting documentation of his deception that corroborated everything Karen had submitted. "I am not allied with Ms. Davis," Melissa concluded, using my maiden name. "We were both victims of Mr. Thompson's elaborate fraud. But I cannot sit silently while he attempts to gain custody of a child when he has demonstrated such profound dishonesty and moral bankruptcy." The judge's decision was swift: temporary full custody to me, supervised visitation for Derek pending the criminal investigation and psychological evaluation. As we left the courtroom, Derek's attorney was already discussing plea options for the mounting fraud charges. That evening, a courier delivered an unmarked envelope to Natalie's house. Inside were documents detailing Derek's financial schemes dating back to his time in Seattle, including evidence he had embezzled from former law partners. A note simply read, "You're not the first. I hope you're the last. Rachel." The Seattle ex had found us, providing crucial evidence that would later be instrumental in Derek's criminal prosecution. 2 days later, Derek was arrested at his hotel for financial fraud based on evidence compiled by Melissa, Rachel, and the law firm's internal investigation. His face appeared in local news stories, leading to a painful conversation with Grace about why Daddy was on television. More women came forward with stories of romantic relationships with Derek under various names, though none had progressed to marriage. As difficult as this period was, it marked a turning point. With Derek in legal custody awaiting trial, the immediate chaos subsided, allowing me to focus on creating stability for Grace. We moved into a small but bright apartment near Grace's school. My parents returned to Minnesota after helping us settle in, though they called daily. I arranged our modest furniture to create a cheerful space for Grace, with a reading nook filled with her favorite books and a wall for her artwork. Grace began to adapt to our new routine, though questions about her father continued. Following her therapist's guidance, I answered honestly but age-appropriately, always emphasizing that Derek's actions reflected his own issues, not anything Grace or I had done. The school community surprised me with their support. Rather than facing judgment or gossip, parents and teachers rallied around us. A group organized a furniture drive for our new apartment. Another parent, a lawyer, offered pro bono assistance with financial paperwork. Grace's teacher gave her special responsibilities in the classroom to boost her confidence. Melissa and I continued our unlikely friendship, meeting weekly to compare notes on legal proceedings and support each other through the emotional aftermath. She'd decided to move back to Boston, but we planned to stay connected. 6 months after Discovery Day, I found myself laughing genuinely for the first time while having dinner with Natalie. We weren't discussing Derek or the divorce, just sharing normal friendship conversation about books and movies. The realization that I could still experience simple joy felt like a revelation. That night, watching Grace sleep peacefully in our new home, I allowed myself to acknowledge a truth I'd been avoiding: life would eventually be okay. Different than I'd planned, marked by this trauma, but not defined by it. For the first time since walking into Blackwell and Hayes that fateful day, I felt something close to hope. 6 months after Discovery Day, I sat in a downtown courthouse watching Derek plead guilty to multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and financial crimes. Melissa sat beside me, both of us there to see justice served rather than for any lingering emotional attachment. Derek looked diminished in his orange jumpsuit, the confident attorney persona completely stripped away. When given the opportunity to address the court, he offered a performance of remorse that might have been convincing had Melissa and I not become experts at recognizing his manipulations. 8 years, the judge announced after considering the plea deal. With possibility of parole after 5 with good behavior and full restitution to victims. Derek's eyes briefly met mine as he was led away. I felt nothing, not anger, not satisfaction, not even closure. Just a dull acknowledgement that this chapter was ending. The divorce proceedings were finalized 2 weeks later. As Karen had predicted, Derek's multiple marriages complicated matters, but since mine came first, it was legally recognized. I was granted full custody of Grace, with Derek permitted to have monitored communication from prison if Grace expressed interest. Financial restitution was ordered but unlikely to be fulfilled anytime soon. Derek had burned through most of his fraudulent gains on maintaining his multiple lives, and what remained was claimed by his former law firm and other fraud victims. I settled into my role at Grace's school, finding unexpected fulfillment in working with young children again. The principal hinted at a full teaching position opening for the following academic year, recognizing my experience and dedication despite my unconventional entry back into education. Our modest 2-bedroom apartment gradually became home. I furnished it piece by piece from thrift stores and discount outlets, taking satisfaction in creating a stable environment with my own resources. Grace decorated her room with artwork and family photos, including some with Derek that I allowed her to keep. Her therapist emphasized the importance of not vilifying her father, despite his actions. Children internalize criticism of their parents, she explained during one of our parent consultations. When we demonize a parent, the child often feels that half of themselves is inherently bad too. So I maintained a neutral tone when discussing Derek, focusing on his choices rather than his character when Grace asked difficult questions. It was one of the hardest aspects of our journey, honoring Grace's need to love her father while protecting her from his destructive influence. Melissa moved back to Boston but remained connected to our unintentional sisterhood. She'd secured an annulment and returned to using her maiden name, focusing on rebuilding her career and sense of self. During one of our video chats, she mentioned a support group for victims of relationship fraud that had helped her process her experience. "You should join the online meetings," she suggested. "It's remarkable how similar all our stories are once you strip away the specific details." Rachel from Seattle eventually reached out directly rather than through investigators. Her experience with Derek had predated both Melissa's and mine, and the aftermath had left her with significant trauma and trust issues. Yet she'd rebuilt her life successfully and offered perspective that proved invaluable to my own healing process. "It takes time to trust your own judgment again," she told me during our first phone conversation. "But you will. And you'll be better at spotting the red flags not just in romantic relationships but in all aspects of life." I began dating again, though extremely cautiously. My first date was with James, a single father from Grace's class whose wife had died of cancer 3 years earlier. Unlike the whirlwind romance with Derek, this relationship developed slowly, built on transparent communication and mutual respect for our roles as parents. James understood my trust issues and never pushed for more than I was ready to give. When I insisted on keeping our relationship private from our children until we were certain of its direction, he agreed without question. When I asked to see his identification, financial statements, and speak with his late wife's family, he complied without defensiveness. "After what you've been through," he said, "I'd question your judgment if you didn't verify everything I tell you." Derek's mother Evelyn continued to be part of Grace's life, visiting monthly and maintaining a loving grandmother relationship despite her son's actions. During one visit, she shared insights into Derek's childhood that, while not excusing his behavior, helped me understand its origins. There were always two Derek's, she explained as we watched Grace play in the park. The charming, perfect son he showed the world, and the secretive, troubled boy who emerged when things didn't go his way. We tried everything: therapy, structure, consequences. Nothing reached that hidden part of him. Her words helped me recognize that Derek's deception wasn't about my inadequacy or gullibility. He was a skilled manipulator who had fooled everyone: family, friends, law partners, multiple wives. This understanding didn't erase the pain, but it helped me release some of the shame I'd been carrying. 2 years after Discovery Day, our lives had found a new equilibrium. Grace was thriving in school, though she still processed complicated feelings about her father through play therapy. I had been promoted to full-time teacher with my own second-grade classroom. Our financial situation remained tight but stable, and I had learned to take pride in our modest but genuine life. Most importantly, I had reclaimed my identity beyond Derek's victim. I was Amanda Davis again, teacher, mother, friend, survivor. The experience had changed me, certainly. I was more cautious, more observant, less naive. But also stronger, more compassionate toward others' struggles, and more appreciative of authentic connections. As Rachel had predicted, I became adept at spotting red flags in relationships. I found myself mentoring other women in similar situations through the online support group Melissa had recommended. Sharing my story helped transform it from a source of shame to a source of strength, both for myself and for others beginning their own recovery journeys. Have you experienced that moment of realization that your pain could become purpose? I'd love to hear your stories of transformation in the comments. If this journey has resonated with you, please consider subscribing to join our community of healing and growth. Your likes and shares help these stories reach others who might be feeling alone in similar situations. Thank you for witnessing my family's journey from betrayal to rebuilding. It's a gift to share these life lessons with people who truly understand. 2 years to the day after I discovered Derek's double life, I stood in our apartment looking at an old wedding photo I'd kept hidden in a drawer. The hopeful young couple smiled back at me, strangers now, particularly the groom with his practiced smile that I could finally recognize as performative. The journey from that day to this one had been painful but transformative. Derek remained in prison, with 3 years left on his sentence. He'd written several times, attempting to re-establish contact. His most recent letter included a carefully crafted apology and request for reconciliation when he was released. I responded once, setting clear boundaries. I would facilitate communication with Grace if she wanted it, but our relationship was permanently over. I had no interest in his explanations or apologies. The man I thought I married had never existed. My last conversation with Evelyn had provided the final pieces of Derek's psychological puzzle. His pattern had begun in adolescence: charming manipulations, elaborate lies, multiple relationships, and a complete absence of genuine remorse when caught. A psychiatrist had suggested antisocial personality disorder when Derek was 17, but he'd refused further treatment and the family had chosen to believe he would outgrow these phases. I failed you, Evelyn had said, her eyes filled with tears. I failed all of you by not speaking up sooner. But blame served no purpose now. We all, Evelyn, Melissa, Rachel, myself, were focused on healing and moving forward rather than dwelling in the pain of the past. My relationship with James had developed slowly into something solid and honest. Unlike the intoxicating whirlwind with Derek, this connection grew from friendship, shared values, and transparent communication. When James proposed 6 months ago, I requested a long engagement, not from doubt but from wanting to savor each step of building a healthy relationship. Grace had adjusted to our new normal with the resilience of childhood. She maintained occasional supervised phone calls with Derek but had declined his requests for in-person visits. Her therapist assured me this was her healthy instinct for self-protection rather than any coaching from me. "What are you looking at, Mommy?" Grace's voice interrupted my reflection. She peered at the wedding photo in my hands, studying it with the solemnity of an 8-year-old. "Just an old picture," I replied, considering whether to put it away. "That's you and Daddy," she observed. "Before he made the bad choices." I nodded, touched by her mature framing. Yes, from a long time ago. She looked thoughtful. Ms. Carla says sometimes the hardest things teach us the most important lessons. Ms. Carla was her therapist, clearly doing excellent work. She's very wise. What lesson do you think we learned? Grace considered this seriously. That even when really bad things happen, we can still be okay. Different, but okay. I hugged her, amazed by her insight. That's exactly right, sweetheart. As we walked hand in hand to meet James and his son for our Saturday playground tradition, I reflected on Grace's simple wisdom. The betrayal had taught me the true meaning of family, not blood connections or legal documents, but honesty, respect, and love demonstrated daily through actions rather than words. The Wives Club still met annually, Melissa, Rachel, and I gathering to celebrate our freedom and resilience. 2 other women had joined our circle after coming forward during Derek's trial. We jokingly called it our survivor's anniversary, but the bond we shared was genuine and healing. I had taken my experience and channeled it into helping others, volunteering with a support group for victims of relationship fraud and deception. Sharing my story had allowed me to reclaim it, transforming it from a source of shame to a source of strength and wisdom I could offer to others just beginning their healing journey. Just last week, I'd spoken with a woman whose husband of 12 years had recently been exposed as living a double life with another family. As she sobbed about feeling foolish for being deceived, I shared what had taken me 2 years to fully internalize, that trusting is not a character flaw, and being betrayed is not a failure of judgment but a testament to our capacity for love and belief in others. The failure belongs to those who abuse trust, not to those who give it, I told her. And you can rebuild, different but whole. That evening, watching Grace play with James's son, their laughter carrying across the playground, I felt a profound gratitude for the unexpected life we'd created from the ashes of betrayal. Not the life I had planned, certainly. But authentic in a way my marriage to Derek never was. Built on true intimacy rather than illusion, strength tested by fire rather than untried optimism. Derek had taken much from me, but he had unwittingly given me something too, the opportunity to discover my resilience, to build a life of integrity, and to experience the power of genuine connection after surviving profound deception. That, I realized, was the final justice, not Derek's imprisonment or legal consequences, but the fact that in trying to destroy me, he had inadvertently set me free. If this story has touched you or helped you feel less alone in your own experience with betrayal and healing, I would be deeply grateful if you'd share it with someone who might need to hear it. Your comments about your own journey mean everything to me. They're why I continue to share these difficult parts of my life. Please consider subscribing to join our community of healing and growth, and thank you for being part of my extended family through these stories. Sometimes the people who understand us best are those we've never met but who recognize their own pain and triumph in our words.